Hey there fellow art lovers and fans of all things painted, welcome back. Today we're going to be painting a half-elf fighter, so let's begin. For this piece, one of the first stages was taking the reference image I was using and changing the facial expression using the liquify tool. I was looking for something laser focused looking, almost angry. I used the symmetry tool to draw out the facial features before turning my attention to the rest of the body. On a second layer, I went in and drew in the details such as the armor she would be wearing and her hair. I swapped out the two poles held in the reference for two war axes, as our fighter would be a dual wielder. Then it was time to block in the colour, using the lasso tool to section off different parts of the character and fill them in. For her skin tone, I went for a pale blue as the base colour, with more peach tones mixed in, as she is part moon elf and part human. Then it was time to work on the shading. For this, I sectioned off one colour at a time before making a multiply, screen, and sometimes a colour dodge layer if I needed some extra sheen, mask to that colour so I could brush in the shading without worrying about going outside the lines. I went in closer to the face, adding in the eyelashes and some other small details. Then I turned my attention to the armour. As usual, I wanted to make sure that the metal had a real sheen to it, so I used multiply layers for the deepest shadows, a screen layer to bring out the basic highlights, and a colour dodge layer to bring out the real strong sheen on the edges of the metal. For the chainmail, I tried a squiggly brush approach but found the outcome pretty lackluster, so I went ahead and made myself a custom repeatable chainmail brush off screen, using a tutorial which I'll link below, and then used it to make a large repeating chainmail pattern. I could then put into position using the warp tool, accounting for the volume of the areas I was trying to cover so the chainmail looked as though it was wrapping around a 3D object. I then added some highlights to it and some further shading. The last objects to be shaded in were the scales of the scale armour, the leather of the gauntlets and belt, the quilted gambeson worn underneath the armour, and the twin war axes. I went for a diamond pattern on the quilted gambeson, as I wanted to portray the thickness of the fabric, as this was a garment worn underneath the armour to prevent chafing and provide extra comfort to the wearer. Then it was time to paint in the background. Initially I wanted an angle somewhere between top down and ground level where she'd be in the middle of a battlefield, but halfway through and after a couple of failed grass attempts I settled on something quite different, and it all came from painting in the sky. The more I looked at the sky I painted, I felt it looked all too peaceful for the midst of a battle, so changed the idea to her being out in the field training for future skirmishes rather than being in the middle of one herself. And with that, I was done. Let's have a look at the final piece. And if you enjoyed what you just watched, please be sure to leave the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell to see more content, and if you want to get straight into some more art, you can go and watch this video for my latest content, or this one for something random.